want to talk to you today about a woman who has made an absolute career, a whole personality really, out of being outraged. And today, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is outraged at Donald Trump for enforcing immigration law. Now, I know, you're sitting in your car right now, you're nodding your head, you're saying, Rick, that sounds about right. And you're correct. You are correct. But stay with me here, because there is so much more to unpack, and we are going to have ourselves a very good time doing it. The Supreme Court of the United States, the highest court in the land, the 9 robed referees, came down this week with not one, but 2 rulings on immigration. And both of them said, essentially, that Donald Trump is allowed to follow the law. That's it. That is the outrage. That is the great betrayal. He is following the law. And Sandy from the Bronx, that's what I call her, Sandy. Sandy took to her microphone, wherever Sandy takes to her microphone these days, and declared that Trump has betrayed the American voters. I'm Rick LeBow, this is Rush Hour, and we are just getting started. All right, my friends, let us dig into this, because I have this story right here in my formerly nicotine-stained fingers, and it is rich. The Supreme Court ruled this week that the Trump administration can end temporary protected status, TPS, for Haitian and Syrian migrants. Now, for those of you who don't spend your leisure hours reading federal immigration statutes, and God bless you for that, none of us should have to, temporary protected status is exactly what it sounds like. It is a temporary designation. It says, your home country is in crisis right now, so you can stay here for a while. It is not a green card. It is not citizenship. It is not a permanent invitation to pull up a chair at the American dinner table and never leave. The word temporary is right there in the name. TPS. Temporary, temporary, temporary. Now, the Haitian TPS designation has been renewed and extended and rolled over and stretched like taffy for years and years. At some point, my friends, temporary stops meaning temporary. At some point, words have to mean what they say, or we don't have law anymore. We just have a collection of suggestions that the left ignores when inconvenient and screams about when convenient. The Supreme Court said the plain meaning of the law written by Congress is on the president's side. That's it. That is the whole ruling. Not we love Trump, not we hate immigrants. The law says what it says. The administration is doing what the law allows. Case closed. So what does Sandy do? Sandy calls it a betrayal. Now, I want you to think about this for a moment. Think about what you would have to believe to arrive at that conclusion. You would have to believe that the American people voted for Donald Trump in 2024 on the expectation that he would not enforce immigration law. You would have to believe that the voters who put him back in the White House did so because they wanted more of what Biden was offering. Open borders, extended TPS, the whole menu. Does that sound right to you? Does that comport with your recollection of the 2024 election? Because my recollection is that immigration was perhaps the defining issue of that election, and the American people spoke loudly and clearly in favor of a president who would actually enforce the border. So, who exactly has been betrayed here? I want a name. I want a specific name of a specific voter who pulled the lever for Trump, expecting him not to send people home. you'll be waiting a long time, folks. Now, I want to say something about the Haitian situation specifically, because the drive-by media will not say it, and that is precisely why I will. The conditions that originally triggered the Haitian TPS designation, this goes back to the earthquake in 2010, in some cases even further, those conditions have been the subject of enormous debate. The Trump administration's position is that the situation has evolved, that the legal basis for the designation no longer holds, and that the law gives the executive the authority to make that call. And the Supreme Court agreed. The media will tell you this is cruelty. The media will tell you this is racism wrapped in legalese. What they will not tell you is that temporary protected status, when it becomes permanent protected status through endless renewal, has ceased to be a humanitarian program and has become something else entirely. It has become, effectively, an immigration pathway that Congress never authorized and the American people never voted for. That is the truth, and the truth has a well-known right-wing bias. Now, back to Sandy. Sandy, Sandy, Sandy. I have watched this woman with great interest, and I say great interest the way you'd watch a kitchen fire with great interest, for years now. She came into Congress as a bartender from the Bronx, which, fine, nothing wrong with that. This is America. Anybody can run for office. But she has spent every single day since her election performing outrage for an audience of people on the internet who seem to enjoy it. And here is what is remarkable to me, what is truly remarkable. She is calling the enforcement of the law a betrayal. She is not calling it legally wrong. The courts just told her it isn't. She is not calling it against congressional intent. The courts just told her it isn't. She is calling it a moral betrayal, which is the last refuge of someone who has lost the legal and factual argument. See, this is what the left does, folks. When they can't beat you in court, and lately they are losing in court quite a bit, they beat you in the court of feelings. They put on the sad faces. They find the most photogenic, affected family and put them on camera. And they say, but don't you care? Don't you care about people? How can you be so cruel? And the implicit assumption in all of that is that if you support the law, if you believe that temporary means temporary, you don't care about people. You're a monster. You're probably doing it because you don't like the color of their skin, which is always the final card in the deck. Meanwhile, the Democrats who have run New York City and New York State into the ground, the same people who turned the greatest city on earth into an open-air experiment in what happens when you stop enforcing laws, these are the people telling us we don't care about human beings. New York City, my friends, under these very same Democrats, has been struggling with a migrant crisis of its own making. The shelters, the hotels, the schools, the hospitals, tens of thousands of people arriving, and the city's infrastructure buckling under the weight. And the Democrats who created that situation are the same Democrats standing up today and calling Trump cruel for trying to bring it under control. There is an extended metaphor I want to use here, and I think it's apt. Imagine your neighbor has a swimming pool, and your neighbor, being a generous soul, tells the neighborhood kids, come on over, swim anytime. And at first it's lovely. Summer afternoons, kids splashing around, everybody's happy. But then the neighbor's yard starts filling up with people, and not just neighborhood kids. People from 4 towns over, people who climbed the fence, people who moved a tent into the backyard, and the pool is overcrowded, and the filtration system is failing, and the yard is a mess, and your neighbor finally says, okay, folks, I think we need to set some limits here. And his neighbor from across the street, who has a bigger yard and a nicer pool, and has never once offered to share any of it, leans over the fence and says, "How dare you? You are betraying the spirit of the neighborhood." That is Sandy Ocasio-Cortez, right there. That's her, to a T. The people who have done the least to solve the immigration problem, who have fought every enforcement measure, who have declared their cities sanctuaries, who have sued the federal government every time it tried to do something, those are the people now weeping loudest about the humanitarian cost. And here is what I want to leave you with on this before we get to the roundup. 2 Supreme Court rulings, both going in Trump's favor, both based on the plain meaning of the law, both upholding the authority of the executive branch to make exactly the kind of call that executives are supposed to make. And I want to point something out here that I think is enormously important and that the media will bury so fast it'll make your head spin. The Supreme Court isn't just ruling on these cases. They are establishing, case by case, ruling by ruling, that this administration is operating within the law. That all the hysteria, all the emergency injunctions, all the rogue district court judges who thought they could block a presidential order with a piece of paper, that all of that is being unwound. Don't doubt me on this. The law was always on Trump's side. It just took a little while for the courts to catch up to the reality that Sandy and her friends didn't want you to see. All right, my friends, the roundup. Rapid fire, let's go. First up, and I love this story, I truly do. Our friends in the press, the drive-by media, God love them. They have been telling us for weeks now that the socialist sweep in New York's Democratic primaries is a sign of things to come, that the country is shifting left, that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez might run for president or Senate or, I don't know, Supreme Allied Commander of the Feelings Bureau. And Kellyanne Conway went on television and said, very correctly, very accurately, hold on a moment. These are a handful of specific congressional districts in one of the most left-wing cities in the Western Hemisphere. This does not a national movement make. And she is right. But I want to add something to what Kellyanne said, because she was being polite, and I am not obligated to be polite. The New York Democratic primaries were won, in some cases, by candidates backed by the new socialist mayor of New York City, Zohran Mamdani, who I have already taken to calling Comrade Zohran in the privacy of my own head, and now in the very public space of this microphone. And one of those candidates, a woman named Aber Kawaz, has a little video problem. A video has surfaced in which she appears to suggest that America deserved September 11th. Now, I am not going to pretend to be shocked. I am not going to clutch pearls, because this is where that wing of the Democratic Party has always been. It has always been there. What has changed is that they're winning primaries now. They're not fringe anymore. They are the party. They are what the Democratic base, at least in certain cities, is voting for. And Letitia James, not exactly a right-wing firebrand. Letitia James is publicly expressing disappointment with the direction of her own party. Folks, when Letitia James thinks you've gone too far left, you have gone too far left. That is a data point. Write it down. And the House Democrats are fighting amongst themselves about what this all means for the party. Half of them want to go full socialist because that's where the energy is. The other half are looking at electoral maps and quietly saying, please, God, not now. Meanwhile, Kellyanne's right. Out in the real country, in the states that actually decide presidential elections, nobody is clamoring for democratic socialism. Nobody is sitting in a diner in Scranton or a diner in Phoenix saying, you know what I think we need? We need to try what Venezuela tried. That sounds great! The Democrats are eating themselves, and I am very much here for it. Second story, the SAVE Act. This is an election integrity bill that would require proof of citizenship to register to vote. Seems straightforward, yes? Well, not to Whoopi Goldberg. Whoopi went on The View, that bastion of American intellectual thought, that Algonquin roundtable of our time, and declared that no one wants voter ID laws. No one, not a soul, a ghost town of desire for voter ID laws. 80% of Americans in polling support showing ID to vote. 80%. That includes majorities of Democrats. That includes majorities of Black Americans. That includes, I would wager, a substantial majority of people who have voted for Democrats their entire lives. 80%. And Whoopi says no one wants it. Now, there is a perfectly good explanation for this, and it is not that Whoopi is lying exactly. It's that Whoopi lives in a world where everyone around her agrees with her, and she has mistaken that world for America. She has confused the green room at The View with the country. She has confused the cocktail parties she attends with the rest of us eating dinner at our kitchen tables. She has confused herself for a person whose opinion on voting law has any bearing on anything at all. And then you have a congresswoman from Pennsylvania, I don't have a nickname for her yet, I'm workshopping, who claimed the SAVE Act would disenfranchise half of Pennsylvania voters. Half of Pennsylvania, apparently, cannot produce identification. That is an extraordinary claim. That would mean millions upon millions of Pennsylvanians are walking around, getting on airplanes, buying cold medicine, driving cars, opening bank accounts, all things that require ID. But somehow, showing ID to vote is a bridge too far. I'll tell you what this argument really is, folks, and I want you to hold this in your mind. This claim that voter ID is disenfranchisement is the soft bigotry of low expectations dressed up in the language of civil rights. The implicit assumption is that certain communities of people are incapable of obtaining identification. That is the argument. That is what's underneath the rhetoric. And nobody in the drive-by media will say it, so I will. That assumption is far more offensive than any voter ID law ever written. And last, quickly, because this one deserves more time than we have, and we'll come back to it, the Palisades Fire arson trial. The jury is deadlocked, hung, in the trial of the man accused of setting the fire that killed people, destroyed thousands of homes, and left parts of Los Angeles looking like the surface of the moon, deadlocked in Los Angeles. I am not going to editorialize too heavily here because a retrial is possible and justice can still happen. But I will say this. When you have spent years undermining your own criminal justice system, when you have elected prosecutors who are more interested in social experiments than in, prosecuting crimes, eventually it catches up with you. The people of Los Angeles deserve justice for what happened to them, and they are not getting it today. My friends, before I let you go, let me tell you something I think about every time I sit down in this chair. This country, with all of its problems, with all of its fights and its noise and its dysfunction, is still the greatest experiment in human self-governance that has ever been attempted on this planet. Nobody else has done what we did. Nobody else started from scratch with a piece of paper and a set of ideas and built what we built. And right now, there are people, some of them elected, some of them in academic institutions, some of them on television shows that air in the morning, who are telling you that this country is not worth defending, that its laws are not worth enforcing, that its founding principles are embarrassing relics, that asking someone to prove they're a citizen before they vote is an act of oppression. Don't believe them. Don't you dare believe them. The American people are not who the drive-by media says they are. You are not who Sandy Ocasio-Cortez says you are. You are not cruel for wanting the law enforced. You are not a bigot for wanting to know who is voting in your elections. You are not heartless for believing that temporary means temporary. You are Americans, and that still means something. I'm Rick LeBow. This has been Rush Hour. Same time tomorrow, if they let us back on.